Hey everybody, this is Tim and Steve at Phantom History. How are you, Steve?
I am well. How are you? Happy Wednesday.
I'm doing great. But tonight we're doing highlights from some really interesting Phantom History podcast episodes. Welcome everybody to Phantom History House Calls. So I guess the premise here is to make sure everybody knows that there are lots of episodes they may not have heard before, and we're going to share some clips from those and talk about some of the interviews you had.
Yeah, I started the Phantom History podcast back in early 2019, so it's been around for a little while. And it hasn't exploded into this huge thing yet, but I have more followers now than I did in the early episodes, which I like to say have improved over the years as I've kind of pieced them together.
So, yeah.
And now we're in the middle of season 6, and I'm working on the next episode now that's going to come out in a couple weeks, and we have a brand new episode coming out this Sunday about the McIntyre Villa up in Kansas. So it's kind of fun looking back at some of the old ones.
McIntyre Villa, Is it like a hotel?
No, it's a old haunted building that was named after the McIntyre family.
Interesting.
And it was their villa, and now Stephanie O'Leary runs it, and it is a haunted investigative location.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So lots going on here. As always, we are starting to make plans or continuing to make plans for travels. So make sure you're paying attention to everything going on at Phantom History to see where we're going to show up next. We're working on making those plans.
Yeah.
Sign up for our newsletter so you always know what's happening. And of course, follow on social media.
Yeah, we just had a great trip to St. Augustine, which we talked about last week, which was a blast. Those videos are still going out because there was so much stuff to explore and to go see. And to Tim's point, we have a lot more places that we're going to go check out too.
Yeah, really excited about doing some traveling, as we've told you. So right now, we're still working on finishing up the things here at the house. If you know anybody looking for a great place to live, let them know that our house is available.
Yeah, still on the market.
Yeah. So anything else before we jump in?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just, the background about the podcast. We've told a lot of people who have been here about it, but when I was a ghost tour guide, I loved telling the stories and seeing people's reaction. And I was also listening to different spooky and historic podcasts when I was in the gym. So I was like, you know what, I can do this. So it started out as just kind of storytelling, and then it turned into this interview format that we have going now.
Very cool. By the way, if you're watching, hello, please put a comment in the comment section. Let us know where you're watching from. Hi, Heidi.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, always great to see Heidi. Good to see you. And I had a question the other day through Facebook. Somebody asked, if we only focus on Florida, because a lot of our videos lately have been about Florida. But the answer to that is no. We have had podcasts about places all over the country, and I'm trying to get some podcasts pulled together of some places overseas as well. So
Very
hopefully
cool.
those will come out soon. And we've had guests on this show from overseas, which has been a lot of fun.
So where do you want to start? Which haunted location that you've talked about and done a podcast about do you want to talk about first?
There's, again, choosing the 4 to talk about tonight was really hard because there's so many great places that I've been able to learn about. But I figured that we would start at the Slippery Noodle because this is in Indiana, and we did this right before we actually moved here and opened up the B&B. And you and I took a trip to Indianapolis.
Yeah, we were at the Slippery Noodles. Very cool.
Yeah, and it's one of the rare instances where I got to go see the place that I had learned so much about. So I actually did this interview with Unseen Press before we did the trip up to Indianapolis, and then ended up meeting them there for dinner and then doing an exclusive tour of the creepy basement of the place.
And in case you're worried, neither of us slipped on any noodles.
There were no noodles to be seen.
That's the level of humor you're getting tonight, everybody. All right. So we have a preview. Do you want to start with the preview from the podcast first?
Sure, absolutely. But some background, the Slippery Noodle is the oldest continuous bar and restaurant in Indianapolis. It opened in 1850. And even though it's had a bunch of different names, it has always had business coming through there. And in during the Civil War, it was actually a stop for the Underground Railroad.
Wow.
And we got to go into the basement and see some of those locations that were part of the Underground Railroad, which was creepy. And that could be the reason for some of the hauntings in this place. But Michael and I'm blanking on her name.
You don't have to remember everybody.
I just studied it too.
Everybody. I know you did.
Who are tour guides up there and historians were nice enough to tell us some of the background.
So shall we show the clip from the podcast?
Absolutely.
All right, here we go.
I was sitting in the room. They called a couple friends. They use it for storage right now for old chairs they have. And I'm not sure what happened, but Nicole and everybody else left all of a sudden. I don't think they said anything, or maybe I was zoning out.
I took a group into the other part that
Right.
was down and around, because this is a huge basement. I took people down and around, and I had my own little experience over there, and you were all by yourself.
I was all by myself, and they had left, and I turned my flashlight on, sat in the total darkness, and I heard footsteps coming from the other side. They had gone to the right, heard footsteps on the left, and that's a hallway that's still there that looks original with gravel, dirt floor. It has several rooms there, like in an old 1840s building with wooden doors. So I heard the gravel footsteps. I thought, it's weird, they went this way. Why is the footsteps coming from here? Got up, turned my flashlight on down the hallway. Nobody was there. Footsteps had stopped. Sat back down. A couple minutes later, it happens again. I got up pretty quickly, turned my flashlight on again, trying to catch the footsteps this time. Footsteps stop again, but they move this time, and then all of a sudden I can hear them right above me on the wooden floor in the front room of the bar, and heavy boots sounding footsteps. And so I message everybody on our chat app, and yeah, Nicole and my other friends are still in the front of the building down in the basement. The other group is on the second floor. And Marty, the manager who was there, was still sitting in the dining room reading our books. So nobody was up there. So that was my big experience. I don't see as much as other people. I hear more, and that one was pretty impressive.
Hi everyone, Steve here.
All right, that is creepy. So you're completely in the dark down in this basement. You know everybody went this way, and you're hearing footsteps come the other way.
Yes. And another part of that podcast is, I think Nicole tells a story where she's sitting in the basement and she actually hears footsteps in the gravel on the same floor she's in walking towards her.
Wow.
And nobody's around. So really, really an active place. I've learned while doing the podcast that a lot of people who do investigations, paranormal investigations, have different experiences where some hear, some see, some sense. So not everybody's experience is exactly the same.
So is that just random, or do certain people, like he said, he hears more than he sees? Is that just the way we happen to perceive our surroundings?
I think so. I've never been able to get an exact answer as to why we're able. I mean, maybe your hearing is better than mine. So maybe you would hear something before I would, for example. And you're also a musician, which kind of thing helps with that.
I've sort of trained my hearing to do that, but you're right.
Yeah.
I guess that's true.
Yeah. And I always kind of, the few places I've encountered something weird, I've usually seen it or feel it. So, but I don't really usually hear anything. So I think it just depends on the individual. And hello, Alex. Thanks for tuning in. Great to see you. And remember, you guys are welcome to ask any questions you might have while we're chatting tonight. And I'm always looking for more locations to discover to talk about for future episodes of the podcast. So if you have any ideas, drop those in the chat too.
So we have another video from the Slippery Noodle as well. This was some bonus content. Everybody, every time there's a podcast put out, there's the podcast itself and then a video preview of the podcast. But there's also the entire interview that you do with someone and then bonus content from that, because you can't put all of an entire conversation with someone into the podcast itself.
Right, exactly. And when I do these conversations, there's a lot more than just the location we're talking about, because I want to get some background about who I'm talking to, who these people are. So that doesn't always make it into the actual streaming episode. But in this case, I had a chance to talk to Nicole, who was in that previous video with her husband, Michael. And this had nothing to do with the Slippery Noodle, but she talked about the first time she ever saw a full-bodied apparition when she was a kid.
See, this is the cool kind of stuff that's in the bonus interviews. If you
wild.
think that the podcast is interesting, you should totally watch the whole thing, because they talk about a lot of stuff like this.
Yeah.
We used to sleep down there with our friends when we had sleepovers instead of our bedroom, which, for a girl, that kind of sucks because my parents are like, just right over, and, you can't have those conversations. Right. But I was down there with a group of my friends. My sister Mary was with me, and I wake up in the middle of the night and my Mexican friend, Elena, is screaming in Spanish. Screaming, and she wouldn't even teach us the bad words in Spanish, right? She did not speak Spanish. She spoke Spanish with her parents, and she did not speak. And every time we're like, "Ooh, what are you saying?" She's like, "Just don't worry about it." And she'd never teach us. So she's screaming, "Madre de mio, Madre de mios," and I'm like, slowly waking up. And one of my friends who did know Spanish, she's saying, "Mother of God, Mother of God," and then she said, Phantasmus or whatever the word is in Spanish, and Phantasma or whatever. And I'm like, okay, phantasm. I kind of get that, and she's like, she was mad. And I was like, what's going on? And she's like, there was a guy in here. I was like, was it my dad walking to the bathroom or something? And she snapped at me and she said, no, it was a man in a cape and he had a gun with a bayonet.
Wow.
And he was pointing it at me. And so I was like, because we never told any of our friends any of this stuff because they didn't, we didn't want them to think we were weird, any weirder than they thought we already were. Right. And there's, too much to go into that. But I was just like, and it was bad enough that she and her sister, who was a little bit older, my mom had to take them home. And it was like 10 miles to their house in the middle of the night. And they never, ever, ever came back to the house, ever.
Everyone.
Wow.
I love that story. And I got to say, Nicole is a historian there in Indiana, and she's written several books about the history as well as a lot of the hauntings. So she was a fantastic interview and a great resource for this.
Yeah, you need to watch that interview. And I have to tell you, I'm always fond of when I hear about a man in a cape. Like there's that great Seinfeld episode where the guy's wearing the cape and it freaks them out. But I kind of wish capes would make a comeback. Capes are fun.
No, they might.
That was one of my Halloween costumes. Is I got this jump around in a cape all night. So if you missed it, you missed it.
Well, if I ever see you skulking around in a cape, I know it's not a ghost. It's just
I still have a cape, so
Halloween.
you could still possibly see it, everybody, if you're really disappointed that you missed it. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
Everybody, we're doing highlights from some of the podcasts, showing some video clips from them. So where are we going next?
Well, I thought it'd be fun to revisit my hometown. Whenever we would do our Ghost Story by the Fire event, I always talk about a location called the Lemp Mansion. And the Lemp Mansion is a really well-known historic location in downtown St. Louis, where a beer family from Germany lived. And I had a chance, this was actually during the height of the pandemic, and this is one of my first interviews that I did over video. So I think this one's on Skype, so it's not really super crystal clear because I hadn't discovered Zoom yet. But this was, I had a chance to talk to this woman named Betsy, who is a historian and also a paranormal investigator. I'm not sure which one you're planning on playing first.
Which one would you like me to play?
Well, why don't you give us some background on what the Lemp Mansion is? So that might be the good one to start on.
Is that the bonus or the one that's in?
That would probably be the bonus one. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll watch there too. By the way, I love how she seems to be sort of like Madame Leota, just a floating head in the darkness. So everybody enjoy.
Tell me a little bit about the history and how the Lemp Empire came to be.
Well, it actually started with a man by the name of Johann Adam Lemp. Now, he liked to be called Adam, so that's what we'll call him. And Adam was a German immigrant. He came here into the United States in the 1830s. He finally ended up in St. Louis about 1838. Now, he was already a very wealthy man. He also had lots of skills, and one of the skills that he had mastered in Germany was making beer. He was a brewmeister. They call it there, a master brewer. So that's what he really wanted to do, but he had to earn his way. He had to make his name known and so forth and so forth. You can't see it, but my hand is going over here. I'm telling the story with my hand.
That's great.
Anyway, so there's Adam in St. Louis. He opens up a small business operation, a mercantile, they used to call it, a grocery business, which eventually he adds on a room to start serving beer, and he serves the community a beer called German Lager beer. No one had ever tasted that before. It was new, and people loved it. They just loved it. So he became very popular, got his name out there, and he closed the business, opened up a brewery. Now, the brewery was called the Western Brewing Company. That he came about 1838. And so the Western Brewing Company was going very strong by the 1850s. And that's how the Lemp Brewery, although it was called the Western Brewery, got its hold on St. Louis back as far back as that. Well, Adam died in 1862, and everything was taken over by his son. And his son was William Jacob Lemp, who changed the name of the brewery to the William J. Lemp Brewing Company.
Everyone, Steve.
All right. So how long ago was this recorded?
Well, in beard years, a long time.
I mean, the beard was really just like really very small and petite.
This was like in probably March or April of 2020. So it was like 5 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah,
You've come so far.
exactly. And the Limp
You
Mansion.
look like you're like 18 in
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
probably
keep
felt like
going.
it.
Back to the Limp Mansion, everybody.
So I actually, like I said, I grew up in St. Louis, and I used to go to the Limp Mansion when I was in high school, and we would go for like dinner theater stuff and special nights out and that kind of thing. So it was always a lot of fun. So getting a chance to talk to Betsy and learn a little bit more about this place was really cool. And part of the podcast, that part was not in the podcast. I used it to kind of set the stage, but she actually told me the story about the first time she stayed in the Limp Mansion by herself
This is a good one.
with her co-investigator. So it was just the two of them.
Mm.
She slept downstairs. Well, tried to sleep downstairs, but was kind of interrupted.
You're going to like this one, everybody. This is really good. Even with your crazy looking beard,
Stop.
this is a great story.
The first time I spent the night there, I was downstairs on the first floor sleeping on a cot, more or less, and it was very late, and I was really scared. First time I had spent the night there, I was in the middle of the hallway, and I did have an assistant with me, and he was sleeping on the couch fairly close to me. And I felt someone walking around the bed, and pounding footsteps, boom, 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 and stopping and leaning over me and making this god-awful piercing noise. I just kept repeating to myself, or to him, I guess, I'm too scared, you got to go away. I'm too scared, you got to go away. So there have been many times that I've been not only startled, but downright really scared.
Mm-hmm.
But as you do something, anything you do, it doesn't become second nature to you. If you did that, then it'd be boring. But if you get a little bit of a handle on it, okay, now I can handle this. What is that? Who is that? Can you tell me who you are? But I still have my moments.
Everyone.
Okay, I got to tell you, that would be terrifying to me if you had, how does she, I mean, she felt it leaning over her after all the clomping around?
Yeah. And to her point, you just have to kind of say, okay, I'm going to ask questions. Who are you? And try to relate to whatever this unseen thing is.
Or her point was, I'm too scared. You need to leave me alone, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I think, her taking care of herself.
Well, yeah, and that's something that I tell people all the time is we have more control in these situations than we think. It's not like all the movies where it's going to get you no matter what. I've kind of learned that you can hopefully be able to just say, you know what, I'm not interested. You need to move along. I'm not here to play with you. But interestingly, Betsy is a tour guide and paranormal investigator there at the Limp Mansion. And now she knows most of the spirits by name. She can almost guarantee that she's going to run into at least one whenever she does her tours. And she talks also in the podcast about one in particular that's in the attic that she calls Oscar because she says whenever she knows he's there, he smells like garbage. So kind of like Oscar the Grouch.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you mean whenever she takes a tour, like something will happen?
She says most of the time something happens because the Limp Mansion is so active. And all the floors, I think there's 4 floors total, 1 basement, 3 stories on top. And I went back home, 2 years ago for my niece's wedding, and my best friend Becky picked me up and we went to the Limp Mansion for lunch. It's a bed and breakfast and lunch spot and restaurant. So we had lunch and then we were able to kind of poke around and we both heard a voice on the 3rd floor in the attic. We both heard a very low guttural hey. And when I turned around to look at Becky, she was gone. She had left the floor. And this was like at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Wise choice, Ben.
Yeah. So it was, there's still a lot of stuff going on there. So next time I go back home, I'm sure I'll go there and eat again.
So they sort of embrace the paranormal part of it. So people that go to that bed and breakfast know this might be part of what they're getting.
I think so. But I also think, a lot of people, if you're not into it, you're just there for the history part of it too. So I don't know if people have experienced stuff there who may not have gone for the spooky stuff. But, as we've always hear, spirits are not your circus animals. They're not going to appear whenever you want them to. So who knows?
Good thing.
Yeah. They got other stuff going on.
All right, so if you have any questions or comments for us, please put them in the comment section. We are doing highlights from some of Steve's podcasts. Go to phantomhistory.com to find all of them, or on our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Search for Phantom History Podcast.
Yes. And again, a lot more episodes are coming out. I've done some more interviews. I have at least 4, if not 5 more that I'm piecing together as we speak. And it was looking for more really cool places to talk about and hopefully visit in person as well. One place I would love to go to is out in California, Preston Castle. And sometimes people will ask me, how do you find these places? If you've never been? I literally just will put in a state and haunted attractions or haunted locations or haunted history, and then start reaching out and contacting these different places. I knew nothing about Preston Castle, which for a long time was a boarding house for boys out in rural California. And it was like orphans that were left out there, or very sick children that were left out there. So it's said that a lot of the children that were out there, as well as some of the people that used to work there, still haunt it. They do haunted tours all the time. They also do a Halloween event. And I had a chance to speak with a woman named Connie, who is a tour guide out there. And she had told me before, during the interview, that she was familiar with Preston, but she didn't really know if it was haunted. She hoped it was. She is a paranormal investigator. And she told me about the time she actually saw a full-bodied apparition.
So is this from the podcast itself?
This is from the podcast itself.
All right, here we go.
My very first night ever going up there, I was just a regular guest going up there to do a paranormal investigation. And I saw a full body apparition for the very first time that night. And I was also touched. And so by the end of that night, I was 100% convinced this place is haunted.
That's amazing, because a lot of people don't experience that, or if they do experience it, it takes a long time of investigating before they encounter something like that. So
Right.
Just for some context, I know Preston Castle used to be kind of like a boys' home, for years and years. And I know it had some other roles as well. Was the apparition of one of those boys? Was it a man? Was it a woman? Or could you tell? Because I know sometimes they aren't always super distinct.
So I could definitely tell it looked like a man in a white jacket, and it was just almost like a profile picture type thing. We were in the doctor's office area, and which is just one of many rooms throughout the whole castle. And I saw what looked like a man in a white jacket just walk down the hallway.
Okay, wow. So she might have seen the doctor.
One of the doctors that worked there during the time that it was a boys' home.
Wow. Hey, Lynn, thanks for watching. So we're doing podcast highlights.
Yes.
So Preston Castle sounds like really haunted. If her very first experience, she had that.
Yeah, and it's also incredibly beautiful. It does actually look like a castle, even though it wasn't built as a castle. It was built by the state. And I also had a chance to talk to one of the volunteers that works there named Sybil. And again, like we said before, not everything makes it into the podcast episode because it doesn't always fit, or it doesn't make sense to include it. And a lot of times they say a lot of funny stories or share a lot of funny stories with me that just don't go with the vibe of the podcast. So Sybil shared with me a spooky yet hilarious encounter she had in the bathroom.
Okay, you can find all these, everybody, on our YouTube channel, all these full interviews. Let's hear it.
We have tours tomorrow, and what I do every Friday before tours is I walk through the whole tour route, and I check for things, make sure that our chains are up, because we have a tour route marked by chains and barriers, and I make sure all the barriers are in place, and I clean up anything that might have happened. In fact, I have a fun story. I was here, actually I had a private tour on this past Monday morning, and I did my walkthrough, and I went to go use the restroom before my guests were arriving. And when I went to wash my hands, I noticed that there was a bat attached to my shirt. Yeah, so it was a bit of a scary experience having this bat clinging to your shirt, and my heart was racing, and I had just been texting with the foundation president, letting him know a couple of things that I found that were out of place. And so I texted them and said, this just happened. I don't know what to do. So I sent them a picture, a selfie of myself, because I'm frozen. And they're like, can you take your shirt off without and wrap the bat in it? I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. I did. And it turns out that the bat actually was dead and had fallen from somewhere above me, and I never noticed it. It had caught on my name tag and had stuck there perfectly, so it looked like I had this bat clinging to me.
Wow, what are the chances of that landing right in that point? That's amazing. Thanks for. I could see you. You would freak out. You don't want to
I have so many questions. I feel like I need to get Civil on the phone.
Yeah.
Like, how do you not notice a bat landing on your shirt? How do
Well,
you not notice this?
It was tiny. It was not a big bat.
Like, what? I mean, I don't know what was going on, but I mean, that seems like, how would you? It's here, right, on her name tag.
Yeah, she said it was hanging on her name tag. But she was just doing her thing and cleaning around. And I guess they're light enough. She didn't even notice it until she was looking in the mirror. It was like, oh, what is this? Oh, I have a
Dead bat that lands on you and you don't know it. Okay, that's funny, but also really disturbing, and I don't know what to think about that.
Yeah. Well, you know, this is a lot for the men and women that.
See, Carrie's freaking out just like I am. I'm with you, Carrie. I'm not having a bat land on me.
It goes for, a lot of the women and men who work in these locations are incredibly brave, and they see a lot of weird stuff. Not always all paranormal. And, it's like me. If I see something creepy crawly, I'm going to freak out. But a bat, I'd be okay.
Well, you'll know the day that a bat lands on me. Everyone in the Tri-County area will know the bat lands on me. Yes.
We'll know what's going on.
That is not ever going to happen to me. I've decided right now. Okay, let's move on. That's really funny, but really,
Yeah.
no, not a bat.
Well, and I also want to say that, like I said, this Sunday, another episode's coming out on the McIntyre Villa. And there's an excerpt that's in the full interview where she talks about a reason why she can't share a piece of paranormal evidence that she got. And I shared it the other day, but it's hilarious. It's actually one of the few times that I've done in a conversation or an interview where I actually had to just stop because I was laughing so hard at her story. So that's coming up on the Sunday's episode of McIntyre Villa. So make sure you listen to that.
It's a good one. And remember, everybody, there's a full interview of all the conversation he had with the people he's been talking to, and you don't want to miss those. Plus, listen to the podcast, of course. Okay, so we got one more. We're talking about some great fun episodes. We're showing some highlights, and we got episodes coming up really soon. So where are we going next?
We are going to the hospital on Old College Hill in Williamson, West Virginia. And this was built as a hospital on top of a hill overlooking this small rural town. It's big, it's beautiful, it's creepy, it's 100 years old, and, an old abandoned hospital. And Tanya, who's one of the owners, actually had wanted to buy this place for a long time. She wanted to own a haunted hospital, and she finally got the opportunity to do that. And she says almost immediately, as soon as they started renovating it or making it safe for people to go in, because it's still, not fully done, like roof is missing and spots, stuff like that. She says that it's incredibly active, especially in the basement where the x-ray machines are, which I would totally go into the basement and check out the x-ray machines. But
so are we going to watch the preview or the full interview?
Well, this is from the full interview.
Okay, here we go, everybody. X-ray machines in the basement?
X-ray machines in the basement.
I know one of our paranormal teams was in there, and they set up, forgive me, I don't know the correct name, but it's almost like a sensor type light string around the door frame, and they were setting over in the corner, and it went off like crazy. And they couldn't give an explanation, because the only way they say that it goes off is if a spirit triggers it. So, and they would be talking and it would just start going off. It would just start flashing. And it was pretty amazing. They were going live. So I watched it live, and it was really active for them. So the 2 x-ray rooms we have it's one of those mysteries, because they were just x-ray rooms, but people have gotten, with me and Charlie, that room was an experience for us. But the other room across the hall from it is the other x-ray room, set up exactly the same way. However, there's no carpet in there, but it's still the heavy door. It has never shut. But I can tell you, our volunteer has had an experience in that room. She saw a man's face in the wall as she was exiting that room. Our tour guides' flashlights have went out for no reason at all. The temperature will change in that room. People get nauseous in that room. So I don't know what it is about the 2 x-ray rooms that's so weird or so special, I guess, but they're fascinating.
Thanks for.
Okay, what was going down in these x-ray rooms?
Well,
like seriously.
And that's the thing, it wasn't a morgue, it wasn't an ICU, it was just, of course, x-ray situations are very serious, but it's not like people were necessarily dying in these rooms all the
Well, yeah,
time.
you think if it was like a surgical room or theater or whatever, like that would be.
Yeah.
I suspect there was other stuff going on.
Yeah, and maybe it wasn't always an X-ray room, or to your point, maybe other stuff was going on, or maybe somebody who died in the building just liked that room, and that's where they hang out and want to haunt. And I think part of the conversation I had with her too in the full interview is she talks about they do a haunted attraction during the Halloween season as well, and I think some of their actors who have been in that room encounter some weird stuff.
Yeah, I remember her telling us that.
Yeah. So
I knew that.
lots of weird stuff. And for her, I mean, she was actually born in this hospital. So now she owns it and runs it as this haunted paranormal investigation place. And she had always heard it was haunted, but she told me, and this was in the actual podcast, she told me about the first time she heard a disembodied voice that convinced her that she had definitely purchased a haunted hospital.
All right, here we go.
I like this story.
So I was walking the hallways and I was walking the longer hallway and I walked past this door and just as plain as day, there was a male's voice that just said, "Hey," and it stopped me in my track because I was just like, I just froze. I really didn't know what to do. I was still new to the game. And my first instinct was, oh, the group's still here because there were 2 men in that group. So I pulled out my phone and I start texting with them. And I said, "Hey, are y'all still in the building? Are you still investigating?" And they said, "No, Tanya, we left about an hour ago, but we need to let you know, as we were packing up our stuff, we kept hearing a male's voice on the second floor." Now, mind you, I hadn't had the hospital very long. This was at 8:15 in the morning. In my brain, I'm expecting this stuff to happen at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. So I was convinced that somebody had broken in the hospital and there was a man in the hospital somewhere. So I searched that whole hospital looking for that guy. Long story short, never did find him. I locked up, I went home, and I did some long thinking. And, I just realized, A, I handled it wrong. I wish I could have a do-over so I would handle it a lot better now.
Wow.
And B, don't go looking for somebody who broke into the hospital by yourself. I think that's the other part of that.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a great idea either.
Yeah, not super safe. But yeah, she also added that now whenever she hears something, she has equipment, she checks it out. She wants to go do more of the investigative side of it. And they are still open and you can still do paranormal investigations.
So that makes sense to me. If she was sort of new to it, you wouldn't immediately think paranormal. You would think, I heard a voice, or somebody's here. That makes sense to me.
And to her point, she said she expected stuff like this to happen at 2 or 3 in the morning, but you got to think 8:30 in the morning, a doctor was probably doing his rounds about that time. So it could have been a residual spirit doing his thing.
You never mentioned residual spirits saying hello or something. I thought that was just an image that you would see that repeated.
It's usually just an image, but sometimes you can hear them.
Really?
Yeah. Sometimes you can smell them. If somebody wears a lot of cologne or something, you might be able to smell them. I know Tampa Theater encounters that sometimes up in their projection booth. So, but who knows? I mean, she doesn't know what it was. But again, doctors are there any time of day, so it could have been something. And even if it wasn't a residual one, if it was an active haunting, why not at 8 o'clock in the morning?
Well, sure, but we do expect it to happen, in the creepy darkness or whatever. Yeah. But I learned something tonight. See, I'm good for the day, everybody. I learned my thing for the day, and I know that residual spirits can possibly make noises. I didn't know that until tonight. So.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
So everybody, remember, you can find the podcast, of course, at our website at phantomhistory.com, or go to YouTube, where you can find them. And also on YouTube, you'll find these clips and also the full interview. And if you want to hear more, it's really interesting because they do sort of talk about themselves and more background stuff than you can put in the podcast. It's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and those live interviews also turn into Conjuring Phantom History episodes too. Where you can, if you're driving and you just want to listen, you can do that as well. So we do have them available on YouTube, and we do have them available on all the podcast streaming platforms.
Yeah, check those out.
And on our website, of course.
So as we said earlier, more podcasts to come soon. Go to our website or to our YouTube channel and find all this stuff. And we are looking for haunted locations and investigators who have evidence from those locations. Please contact us if you know anybody. And if you've enjoyed this, obviously tell somebody that it's going to be right here where you're watching it and on our website later.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot more great places coming, a lot more cool interviews that we're working on and setting up in the near future. So stay tuned here on Wednesdays at 7 o'clock Eastern.
This was fun. Thanks, Steve.
No problem. It's always a blast.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Really appreciate it.